What's it like inside Mikey's house from the Goonies? What kind of gear do you need to shoot a bunch of footage that can fit inside a carry-on? And how did I, a music YouTuber from Atlanta, get the chance to fly to Oregon to help out a bunch of guys from Iowa? Let's get into it. Hi, my name's Adam. I'm a content creator and a musician. My goal with this channel is to help other creators learn how to tell their stories. If that sounds good to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. So if you haven't seen it yet, the house that they used as Mikey's house in the Goonies is up for sale, and the Confused Breakfast got a chance to do a walkthrough of the actual house. And I'm one of 5 people that got the opportunity to go inside the house to shoot that video, as well as a bunch of others that are going to be released over the coming weeks. But how on earth did I end up there? Let's back up a bit. In 2019, I had an established podcast and I stumbled upon this group based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa called the Pork Tornadoes. They had really cracked the code on what it takes to be a successful cover band. I really admired their social media strategy, and I found that their drummer Mike was all over the same forums that I posted to. And so I randomly reached out to him to say basically, hey, I dig what you guys are doing, let's chat sometime. Over the next 3 years though, we became really close. He guested on my podcast, I guested on his. We also started discussing a film podcast that he would end up releasing during the pandemic called The Confused Breakfast. Since launching 2 years ago, they have exploded in popularity and have gotten some really amazing opportunities. Then about a month ago, I got a message from Mike after they had gotten the chance to be on Bert Kreischer's podcast that they were going to be flying out to Oregon to do a tour of the Goonies house. Apparently the real estate agent who had that listing had heard them on the podcast and thought it would be a really creative way to promote the listing. I didn't for a second consider actually doing anything about it, but I told my wife about how cool it was they were going to get a chance to go. She immediately responds with, "You're going, right?" I was like, "What? No." She goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, mostly because they didn't ask me to." In her infinite wisdom, she suggested that I just invite myself. So with her blessing, that's what I did. My pitch was basically I would fly myself out, bring whatever gear they needed, help them shoot the video, and basically stay out of their way. It was a pretty solid proposition. Once they got their plans in order, they decided they could use some help, and I was cleared to join them on the trip. Okay, so let's talk about gear. The objective of my gear list was to be able to shoot great-looking 4K footage without taking up a whole bunch of room. Everything I needed had to fit inside of 2 carry-ons in addition to my clothes and be easy to transport. My primary camera ended up being a Sony ZV-E10 and a small rig cage. The cage provided some protection while traveling, as well as some additional mounting points. But in my opinion, the best feature of that cage is that it has an Arc Swiss mount built into the bottom of it, which means all I needed to do was buy some Arc Swiss plates for my existing gear, and then I had a rock solid solution that would keep everything super secure. I ended up purchasing 3 of these Arc Swiss plates from Amazon. They worked really well. By the way, I'm going to include every piece of gear I used in the description of this video. For audio, I used the Rode VideoMic Go 2. It's a great mic with some really cool features. The biggest feature is that it can be used for cameras as well as an iOS device with the included lightning cable. We'll get back to that in a minute though. My primary support hardware was this Manfrotto monopod. This is the aluminum 290 model, and this includes the Oben VH-R2 head. Since we had limited time and we were shooting in multiple locations, I wanted to have something that was super nimble and was easy to deploy at a moment's notice. A tripod would have worked as well, but it would have taken way more time to set up and tear down. I did end up packing a Mactrem compact tripod, but we ended up only using it for the podcast portion of the filming. The only other camera gear I brought was a DJI Osmo Mobile 3 for my iPhone 13 Pro. That gimbal ended up getting used a lot for exterior shots, as well as a portion of clips where we were trying to recreate famous scenes from the movie itself, and a small LED light that we used inside the house for when the lighting was low or not centered on our subjects. I was actually fortunate enough to be the first guy inside the house so that I could shoot reactions as the other guys came in. Even just being a part of the crew, it was amazing to see this piece of cinematic history for the first time. Once we arrived, we had from sunup until sundown to get every shot that we needed. So we had to be really quick and intentional about moving through things and getting good takes. We spent most of the morning doing the actual walkthrough of the house itself. Basically, we would walk into a room, the real estate agent would explain the features of that room. We would then review shots that were taken inside of that room in the movie itself, and then we would record the guys talking about it. One of the biggest challenges, though, was framing. Something I didn't realize from watching the original movie is that this house is much smaller than it appears. In order to make these shots work, I had to shoot super wide and be as far away from the guys as possible. We did have a second camera op that was doing more close-up footage so that we had better coverage, but if you watch the video, you can see that the wide shots were primarily what we ended up using. I can't even imagine what it would have been like in 1985 to shoot with those giant gigantic cameras inside that place. Once we got the majority of the interior shots done, the guys started setting up for the podcast recording. While they were doing that, I ended up going outside and shooting some more exterior shots because the sun had moved and it was brighter than when we first arrived. As far as the podcast shoot went, we were doing a 3-camera setup with my ZV-E10, a Canon T6i, and a GoPro Hero 11, all going into a Blackmagic Designs A10 Mini Pro camera switcher. The camera feed was being recorded directly out of the ATEM to an external hard drive for quick turnaround, as all you have to do is sync the video with the audio and then you're ready to post. For audio, they were using the Rode Rodecaster Pro with Procaster microphones. That was being recorded into the Rodecaster Pro itself via SD card, and they were also recording into Reaper on another machine for redundancy. We ended up recording 2 full podcast episodes as well as some sponsorship videos while navigating a live news crew and just people who were coming up to the house just to look inside. Once we wrapped there, we cleaned up all of our gear and headed directly to the Oregon Film Museum, which is housed inside the county jail that was used in the opening shot of the Goonies. We got to get inside the Fratelli's Jeep.
Not a chance.
Are you sure?
No, you can't.
Dude, it's not.
Hey, come on!
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Give the camera back. Give the camera back.
You should be able to unlock the other ones from the... Then we did a quick run through of the building, took some photos, shot some more footage, grabbed some souvenirs, and then we got back in the car to drive to Cannon Beach because we wanted to get a shot of Haystack Rock before the sun went down. We were sweating it because the news crew had pushed back our departure time and we were rapidly losing daylight. We basically had enough time to park the car, grab our gear, run to the beach, and catch the last 5 minutes of sunlight to finish the shoot for the day. After the sun went down, we checked into the hotel, had our first actual meal of the day, and then hung out on the beach under the stars before calling it a night. The next morning was another run and gun kind of deal. We got up before the sunrise to shoot some more footage at Haystack Rock, then packed up all of our stuff and headed to Ecola State Park. We found a local spot for coffee and breakfast. I had this Marionberry scone. It was amazing. Once we arrived to the park, we jumped out of the car and shot in 2 primary locations. One is where the Lighthouse Inn from the Goonies was. We ended up lining up a shot so that we could recreate a scene of the guys looking at the map with all the rocks in the background. Then the parking lot where they shot the fair scene from Kindergarten Cop as we got back in the car to go to the beach in order to shoot some scenes from Point Break. We were there for maybe 30 minutes total, then we got back in the car to start driving back to Portland. We did end up stopping briefly in Astoria to pick up a couple more shots. One of them being the exterior for the school that they used in Kindergarten Cop and the crosswalk that Rosalita was on during the car chase from the opening scenes from the Goonies. But we also ended up going to the Short Circuit House as the owner found out that we were in town. Basically, we showed up, I turned the camera on, and for the next 10 minutes we did a full walkthrough of the house and all of the memorabilia that he had compiled from the production. He was a super nice guy and really loves that movie. He's actually in the process of restoring it to the way that it was back when the movie was shot. It's actually an Airbnb, so you can rent it for your next trip to Astoria. I'll post a link for that as well. Side quest complete, we finally loaded back into the car and headed to Portland. We got the car dropped off and I got the guys put on the plane, and then I spent the rest of the day wandering Portland to catch a red-eye back to Atlanta that evening. It was an incredible 36-hour adventure. I got the chance to hang out with the Confused Breakfast guys who were awesome and so much fun to be around. I was able to direct and produce some amazing content for them, and I got to see one of the most iconic spots from my childhood in real life. And that never would have happened if I hadn't put myself out there. It can be so easy to see something cool happen to somebody else and be jealous or dismissive. I have definitely taken that path before. But instead, I put my neck out, provided value to their team, and got an amazing opportunity to do something I never even dreamed was possible. Try to keep that in mind as you make contact with other creators in your network. You never know what a DM in 2019 could lead to. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to pour more time into this channel as I know that there's probably a lot of people like me who want to get into content creation but aren't quite sure how. Trust that 5 years ago, I was just a musician who was looking for content that spoke to me but wasn't able to find it. So I started on a journey that led me here. If you're at that same place today, trust that you can get there as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.